And now, it's time for TJ Wow.
It certainly is. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you are and when you are watching or listening to this. This is me. I am the Deputy Editor of TJ. I'm your host today, and ironically and well placed, this is a picture of me from the TJ Awards. Year before last, I think this one was. Sadly, it was not my award that I was winning, but it was one that I was giving out and making somebody very, very happy. Now, the way that we approach all of our webinars, and today is no different, is it's all about the conversation. We want to make sure that whilst we've got some things that we're going to discuss that we think are important, we want your voice and your questions too. You've got the chat window that you can use any time you like for any kind of comments or questions. Also, at the bottom of the screen, there's a specific Q&A area. And if you're thinking, I definitely have a question for one of the speakers, put it in there and I promise not to miss it. You can follow us on Twitter or tweet out anything on #TJWow, or of course you can use #TJA19 for the TJ Awards 19. And I think what's really important to know is that this session is being recorded. It will be available publicly on our website and on our YouTube channel. And at this point, I would love to bring, I've done something completely wrong with the video. There you go. Starting within 3 minutes and I've done something wrong, but it's all right. Our speakers are all amazing and they will get the video set back up, I promise. And whilst we're doing that, I would just like to say that our three speakers today, we have Hesketh, Chris and Margaret. They're all absolute experts and really know their stuff from their different perspectives to do with the Training Journal Awards. And we're going to bring them on screen any moment. I've just given them a job to do because I got the video bit a little bit wrong, but they're going to be absolutely fine and get everything set up. So my apologies about that. Let's bring on our videos and we're going to get everybody to just introduce themselves so we know who it is that we are working with. Let's have ladies first. We're going to go to Margaret, then Chris, and then Hesk. Margaret, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why is it that you're here today about awards success?
Hi everybody. I'm Margaret Burnside, Director at Cake People Development. We provide a wide range of learning and development support for people, anything from leadership and management apprenticeships through to bespoke tailored leadership programs, one-to-one coaching, a whole range of things in L&D. I've been judging TJ Awards for about 8 years now. Absolutely love the time of year when it comes around to looking at the submissions, and particularly enjoy the interviews, usually around September. The best bit is giving out the awards, as Joe just alluded to. There's nothing nicer than presenting people with their awards and hearing the winner's name called and watching the reaction from the crowd. So a great thing to do. Absolutely love being involved. I'm very happy to be here sharing some top tips.
Wonderful. Thank you, Margaret. And I must say, it does definitely help when Margaret wore the most amazing pink sequin dress last year. It was like a scene from... Was it Jessica Rabbit, something like that? It's what you reminded me of. You look stunning.
Thank
So,
you.
moving swiftly on. Chris, I don't remember ever seeing you in sequins, but we're going to have a chat with you now. So, Chris, I'm just going to unmute you. Apart from sequins, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you're connected to the TJ Awards. Oh, now we can't hear you, Chris. So I have unmuted you, but maybe you need to unmute you on your computer. We have had a couple of techie issues with this, didn't we, when we're setting things up? Let's try again.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Oh, God. Right. I'm the founder and managing director of a company called Boost Awards and a subsidiary called Boost Evaluation. And we love awards. It's what we do all day, is help people pick and enter awards. We've got the awards list website with 3,500 awards, and we help people choose which to enter. And we often recommend the TJ Awards because of all the learning awards out there. The process is thorough. The ethics are great. The integrity, the dinner is fabulous. That it has a proper scoring system. It's got a 2-stage process. It's got a great name, a great publication behind it, and as such, my history was I worked for a company that used to enter. I worked for a company called Blue Sky, and we were the overall winner of the first ever TJ Award back in 2006, and I've been entering them prolifically ever since. And I've got 20 colleagues who write entries as well. So Big fans, prolific enterer, and winner.
Wonderful, and what a great place to be. So not only have you won them, but you'll help other people to win them as well. I think that's lovely.
A lot of fun. Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. And lastly, Hesketh, let's come to you and find out, who are you, what do you do, and what's your connection with the TJ Awards?
Okay, my name's Hesketh Emden, and I work in talent management, high potential selection, and leadership development. I've been with the TJ Awards something like 3 years, so I'm a real newbie, but in my time I've applied for various awards and won the odd thing and been shortlisted for others. And what I particularly like about the awards, as Margaret said at the beginning, is you get to see some really interesting projects that are out there. You get to meet your shortlisted group and interview them and find out what's going on, and I think there's always something to learn. So while I may be a bit seasoned, you can tell I've had a hard life, I might be a bit seasoned with L&D, you can always find out something else. So I particularly like the awards, and I'm a judge again this year in the Best Talent Development Programme. So please, I'd encourage you, have a good old think and apply for 1 or 2 categories, because I'm sure whatever you've been doing could well be worth a look at.
Wonderful, thank you, Hesketh. Really good introduction from all three of you there. Let me come to Chris first on this one, because the very first part is actually completing the application form. So give us some tips and hints, Chris, on your views of entering the TJ Award.
Well, it's very different this year. For those who've applied for it before, it used to be 10 sections in the application form. It's now down to 3. But the word count is more per section. At its tightest, it was 100 words per section. It's now 300 words for your context, and 350 words for your strategy, and 350 words for your results. And my top tip would be, well, there's a few here. Firstly, tell a story. The 3 boxes do let you set the scene, describe your journey, and list the outcomes. I would also only focus words on things that are wow. So the strategy, you've only got 350 sections to describe the design, your rationale behind all the different elements, why you decided on blended learning, e-learning, 70-20-10, whatever methodology you applied, why, and then what did it look like, when did it happen, who took part, when, and maybe your initial reactions and quality assurance and project management, all in 350 words. So don't waste time just getting bogged down in the quagmire. And so firstly, the only 2 things that really, really matter in that section is the challenges you overcame and the creative, innovative things you did. So focus on them. Third thing is the results section. Happy sheets don't qualify as results. That's quality assurance. It's not results. Take up, again, is necessary, but it's what's called a leading indicator. It predicts success. It's not success. And your results should never end in a survey. As important as surveys are, surveys only go up to level 3 at best. So you need some data to show that the business is performing better. But the thing that is toughest in the results section is cause and effect. To show that these big picture, strategically important performance improvements can be attributed to a training program. And there's loads of different tricks for that. But that's the thing that the judges are probably most sensitive to, is that how can you possibly take credit for this reduction in staff attrition or this increase in share price? You've got to show cause and effect, and that is tough. And all in less than 1,000 words. Oh, no, exactly 1,000 words.
Yeah, in 1,000 words, yeah, because what I think the way I see the application, it's very much, when I've been judging in the past, you read 5, 10, 20, 25 applications, and you're weeding out the wheat from the chaff. Whilst everybody who applies has done a great job because they're applying for something, there's a point at which you've got to decide, well, which 6 or however many it is are we going to shortlist. So those 1,000 words are really just kind of the first stage to the next part. It's how do we get through to the next part?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, think of it as very similar to applying for a job. Your CV is often written off in the first line. The same way as an award application, you've got to have a punchy intro, immediately get to the point, be clear throughout, tell a story, balance bullets and narrative. It's a real art, but the judge has to be engaged from the first line through to the end. And it's an emotional as well as a rational. They have a scoring system to apply, but they will make an emotional decision. Did that story engage them? Was it exciting? Did it inspire them? As well as, was it a good use of money and a rational business case? So it's a difficult balancing act. But it's just because you did, as Joe was saying, just because you did a good program doesn't mean you're going to get shortlisted. You hope so, but it's a big difference between deserving a shortlisting and getting a shortlisting, and that's all about how you make those 1,000 words count.
Thank you, Chris. Margaret, let's come to you on this one, because as somebody who's judging these awards, you will have read through umpteen of these different things. What is it you look for if you're looking through? You're on the first entry that you're reading, you're on maybe the 20th entry that you're reading for that category. What are you looking for?
Yeah, building on Chris's comments, I think there's a number of things. One, you want to feel that it's been a solid programme, that the proper work has been done up front, so all the before, what do we know about this particular area of performance, etc. before, what did we want to be different, then really understanding the implementation, and finally getting that impact really, really clear. So that three levels of sharing the story is really helpful, because it focuses people into the before, during and after story that we like to follow. We are often looking for things that are a bit different. However, I think a good solid story would be very, very welcome. So almost, yes, we might have done something that we've been doing for years, using a methodology that isn't necessarily new and innovative, but what's different is that we absolutely made sure that it worked and it made a change to business outcomes. So making that link to aligning to strategy, business outcomes is really helpful for us, even if it's not using the latest AI or VR technology. We're really interested in knowing that it's made a difference and it was right to solve a problem, improve performance, or achieve a business outcome that was clearly defined at the beginning. So we will tend to, certainly for me, first pass is, did it meet the criteria? Has it actually taken us through those steps? Does it have some very clear facts in there? And then that's first pass. And then when we're really sifting out that short list, when we have many entries, we're then really interested in something different, something that stands out. As Chris said, maybe something emotional that we can tap into, or something that makes us think, oh, hang on a minute, this is really useful stuff. I'm always looking for good stories to share. So if I imagine someone being a winner, what would be great to see in a future TJ magazine about their story that others can learn from? So what's really good practice here that others can think, oh yeah, we could try that, we could do that. So solid facts, bit of something a bit different, which may be just describing it in a way that taps into our emotions, and then what's great for others to learn from.
Really great talk through what you're looking for there, Margaret. Thank you, and great summary there as well. And obviously, if anybody's got any thoughts or questions, do add them in the chat window. I liked your point about the technology or the approach or the methodology. It doesn't have to be the latest, greatest, expensive thing. And actually, to that point, I judged the technology award a couple of years ago for TJ, and there was an entry that had used virtual reality. And, you might kind of go, oh, virtual reality, yay, let's shortlist them. But actually the award entry wasn't very good, because they hadn't explained their methodology and approach, and actually their technology very well. And it led me with all these questions of, are you actually using VR? Or is it something that you think is VR? Because the technology bits just didn't add up for me. And that's the thing with the application, the way I saw it was, you've got to make me interested enough to want to find out more rather than kind of confused, which is what that application had led me to feel. So, Hesketh, what about you on this point? What are you looking for in the applications? Is it story, like Margaret said, or are there some other bits and pieces that you focus on too? And let me just unmute you, Hesketh. There we go.
I think both Margaret and Chris have really sort of said it, and I like the emotional bit too, and maybe that's what you don't do in a job interview because you couldn't possibly go with that. But for this sort of thing, I think in the past we've been rather taken when a learning and development manager, for example, or a team has learnt as they've gone along. You've seen their thinking, they've grown through the process, and it really gets you very excited. You think, great, you know, this is what it's all about, and you can see the personal journey. I think the very first place to start, if you think that the process is a little bit daunting, I suggest to people that they think about what they might say down the pub one evening about what they've been doing. As simple as something like, gosh, we've had a real problem with customer retention, so in order to deal with that we've done A, B and C. And I can't believe it. It's really fantastic, because what we've noticed is this, that and the other. And you would quite casually say that. So that, I think, is a really helpful point to start. That might tell you you've got a story. Then you can go back to the structure of the application, either the TJ Awards, brackets, possibly other ones, and think, how do I translate that into answering the questions that the people are looking for? The evaluation is really happy. Happy. I was trying to avoid what Chris was saying about happy sheets. The evaluation is really important, but it might be that you didn't quite deliver what you thought you were going to deliver, but you deliver something else. Or as a consequence, you're not going to do this again, you're going to do something else because that's better. And I think that can still be worth sharing, because if you're learning and you're adapting and you're improving, then that's worthwhile too. As Margaret says, it's an opportunity to share. We as judges get to hear and see, and you get an opportunity to share, and at the award ceremony you get to hear about other people doing bits and pieces. So I think that's it. Without really repeating what anybody else has said, I think that might be a good place to start.
That sounds great to me. Thank you, Hesketh. And Margaret, on that point, do we want to know about people's mistakes, or should that 1,000 words all be, we were amazing and this is what we've achieved?
Well, yeah, we only want entries from people who are absolutely amazing and never make any mistakes. We all know that the best learning can come from trying something and it not quite working. And we certainly love to hear stories of where people said, actually, we tried this, we evaluated it and decided that wasn't the right way forward, and so we tried something else and got a different result. So as Hesketh said, the story, the learning along the way, the things that we tried are just as important. And again, if we think about ultimately sharing this with other people, then people like to know what worked and what didn't work. You may help someone else review whether that's going to work for them or not. So yeah, we definitely want to know about why you changed course, why you didn't do things the way you set out to. Yeah, that's good stuff to hear about.
Thank you very much. And Chris, you run sort of TJ workshops and help people really kind of think about what is it that they're going to say, what do they put on the application form. What are some of the things that you
The first question you should always ask yourself
for their award entry?
Any kick-off call to start writing an entry is, what is it we're entering? Which seems a really blindingly obvious question, but it's surprising that can, when there's no, people will often just start putting pen to paper and just start writing and get to the end and run it past their boss, and the boss says, hold on, that's not what we're entering, is it? I thought we were entering 3 different programs. Or so by what are we entering? It's the breadth and the depth of the story. What is within scope of this storyline? Is it just your virtual reality piece that maybe you saw earlier, Joe, or was it a part of a blend? Or was it a 5-year journey which concluded in the use of virtual reality? Or is it just a year-on-year improvement where we're comparing virtual reality with an induction that was done using a webinar? So you've got to decide what's in scope and the timeline, so the breadth and the depth of the story, and that's the first thing. Secondly, why is it wow? Clear statements saying it is unique, it is the fastest, the biggest, cleverest, the most complicated, the most global, the most multilingual. What is your superlative? And make sure you can back that up with some kind of evidence. And then the results. Yeah, as Hesketh was saying, it's evaluation is vital, and I think Margaret, myself, and Hesketh on the same page here, that it's not just about sort of dry statistics as well. It's qualitative as well as quantitative evidence. It's not just a number, and we can't. The entry form this year doesn't allow for graphs. I'm slightly disappointed to say. I would like to see somewhere in the application form where you could upload your appendices and graphs, but you can't. You have to use words to describe statistics, which is I am not a fan of, but there we go. And so that's a challenge in itself. You've only got 350 words for the results to go through all 4 levels of the Kirkpatrick model, and you can't use any pictures or graphs or diagrams. So you've got to be very selective. What are your killer stats? And those are decisions to make. You can't just download random statistics. Find the wow in the statistics.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I really like the pictures to tell the story as well, so I can really understand your thoughts there. But as you say, it really does focus you on what are your key 2, 3, 4, 5 things that you want to do, because whilst you can't add those to your award entry, it's text only. Obviously, if you get shortlisted into interview stage, that's where you can start to kind of have handouts, have information, have media to a certain extent, and start kind of really building on that. So before we get to that interview stage, let's just focus on the applications for just a moment more. Margaret, to you first of all, and then I'll come to Hesketh and Chris afterwards. Margaret, what are some of the kind of maybe common mistakes, if they're mistakes, what are some of the common challenges or issues that you see with people when they're entering the awards?
The most usual one I've seen over the years is people obviously putting in a generic application for multiple sections. So, they've tried to make it fit several things, but they haven't adapted that application. So it's very clear that they've emphasised points that would be great for a leadership development program, but doesn't really quite fit for coaching and mentoring, for example. So that idea that you need to adapt it. And as Chris said, also answer the question, look at which one specifically you're entering and make sure the language is right, that you're bringing out the right points. It may be the same program, that's absolutely fine, but make sure you've adapted that wording. And I think for me, the second one is often not enough facts. So a lot of story, a lot of, everybody loved it, it was great, it was really enjoyable, and people said how much they enjoyed it, and what difference did it make? What are the facts that back up your sense of something being successful? So there are 2 biggies for me. I better leave some for the others.
Thank you very much. Hesketh.
I think, excuse me, there's a phone ringing in the background. Hopefully it'll disappear any second. I think it's setting the scene quickly. You don't have to waste words to do that, but it could be something like we're a global multinational, the UK division has just implemented so-and-so, there were challenges with so-and-so, and consequently we felt we needed to do so-and-so. And that in the space of 1 or 2 sentences helps us as a judge understand what's going on. We don't want to just, Joe, I'm hearing myself in my headphones. Either that or but I tell you what, maybe I can. All right, okay. Yes, so I think it's setting the scene really quickly because it helps us then focus on what's going on. The other thing is the evaluation, and maybe this place to start, as I think Chris was saying, happy sheets don't cut it and da-di-da. I think maybe you aren't in a role which gets to see the chief executive and so on, but what would you say if you were looking for more money and the chief exec said, did this program work? Why should I spend £5,000, £50,000, £100,000 on doing some more? And that will help you present the answer to us, because you should have something like that at your fingertips. So I think that's it. Context at one end and decent evaluation at the other, because the real bottom line is, unless you're delivering some sort of benefit, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. Absolutely love that. Thank you, Hesk. And I've said this before when we've discussed awards. I remember reading something where somebody submitted for an award and their outcomes were to do with the development of their business. They were a vendor. And it's like, I don't really care about the development of your business. This isn't a business award. This is an award about how you use technology for learning for your end client. So it wasn't about how it improved the performance of their client's business. It was just, yay, we sold this many courses. Like, that's not quite what we're looking for. They didn't get shortlisted. Chris, you help people on the TJ and other awards all the time with their awards nominations and submissions. What are some of those things that they do when they come to, they've made a start, they've got a really good entry? What's some of the detail, the spit and polish that you want to add? Not the big sweeping changes, the real detailed changes that take them from a good entry into kind of, we are pretty sure this is going to get shortlisted.
Cool. There's two things. When someone
Chris,
either sends us a draft and says, we didn't win, I don't know why. For a lot of entries, the vast majority of awards are written entry only, and they'll say, we didn't win, it must have been because we didn't advertise in the magazine or something. And they'll send us their entry, or someone sends us a draft TJ entry. There's always two things. I don't even need to read the entry. I will reply back to them, and I can say these two things, and I can guarantee that they will have got them wrong. The first one is, you didn't answer the questions. And these are the TJ Awards this year, because it's gone from 10 questions down to 3, they're compound questions. There are 3 or 4 things that you need to cover in each. And there is a scoring system. So if you don't answer the question fully, you're not going to earn the marks, because they're not going to give you marks for fresh air. So yes, absolutely tell the story, but make sure you do it while answering the questions as well, which is difficult in so few words. But, the winner's going to do it, so let's make it you. And the other thing that they do, and this absolutely marries up with what you just gave as an example, and Hesketh and Margaret's previous examples, is to do with the outcomes. And it's your outcomes don't marry up with your goals. So whatever you said at the beginning in the context, which does clearly state you need to include your objectives, and that's not just attendance objectives, it is, or on time, on budget, it is objectives about impact on the business. And whatever you include at the end needs to be included at the front. Your outcomes and your objectives need to marry up. And a number of times people will say, hey, look, we did this leadership development program and there were lots of great initiatives off the back of it as part of the workshops and it made lots of money. And said, but that's not what you set out to do. That's not what justified it. And as you said, Joe, it's selling more courses because people liked the course is not the desired impact of a learning. So it's making that front and back mirror is very, very common mistake. Those two things.
Yeah. And as a vendor myself, it's like more courses sold. That's amazing. I love that. But that's not the impact that I'm making to my clients. So you're right about the kind of what those things kind of match up. Margaret, let's come to you on this one and start thinking about the interview process. So somebody submitted their award. They've done a great job because they've followed what you guys have said. Maybe they've been on Chris's workshop or followed his ideas. And they've been shortlisted and they're now at the interview stage. So they're at their interviews in London in September. Talk us through just the gist.
Yeah, it's a good point. We definitely notice that people arrive usually very early. And obviously quite nervous, and often they, the key L&D or HR team will have brought a director or a senior manager from the business as well to support them. And I'm always amazed at how nervous people are. Now the great thing is it means a lot to them and they want to get it right, but we are all as judges very human, as I hope you're appreciating. And if you get to that stage, we really want you to do well. So you will find that we will set a relaxed atmosphere. Yes, we have questions to ask. Yes, there is that initial formal bit. So we ask you to formally present for about 10 minutes, and then we will open up a discussion and questions. But you will find us a very willing, very eager, very interested audience and wanting to hear your story. What I particularly love about it is there are some rules about the presentation around no PowerPoint, and then we love to see how creative people have been in bringing along some visuals in a variety of different ways. Sometimes people will bring along some videos where participants in a program have shared their experience or what was great about it from their point of view. Sometimes the chief exec or an MD will do a video to say how important it's been for the business, etc. So some backup. And I think what the interviews do is really bring out the human elements. We are talking about people, and we're talking about helping people to learn and develop and grow. And I think the facts and the figures and the written submission will tell us quite a lot that makes us curious to know more. But it really brings out the human element at the interview. And so we really want you to feel as relaxed as possible to be able to do that and tell that story, bring it to life for us. And yeah, be creative. As you said, Joe, we've had handouts, we've had all sorts of pictures, videos on iPads, a whole variety of things to bring it to life. But we want to hear from you. Sometimes people will bring along someone. So maybe if it's a mentoring program, they're talking about somebody who's had mentoring through that program. We'll talk about their experience as part of the presentation. One thing I would flag up is people struggle a little bit to keep their story within the time allotted. So try really hard to be disciplined, because if you go much over that, we don't have as much time for questions to get our answers and meet our needs to be able to make the decision about who the final awards winners are. So yeah, but we love that part of the process. Very intense though, one straight after the other. It is quite a full program, but really enjoyable.
Absolutely, you get kind of writer's cramp by the end of the day, don't you? With so much note taking, and I think that part about breathing life into your submission is really important. As Hesketh said, that idea of if you were just down the pub, how would you explain it? And I think that's something. Maybe not write your submission in a pub. That's not what I'm saying. But that personal element to things is really nice, and that comes the page. It helps me to kind of decide whether I want to shortlist it. And I think that point about trying to make it a comfortable environment, because the point is, well, we've shortlisted you because we like your story, we like what you've done, we think you've done something amazing. And I remember one of the awards entries a couple of years ago, it was maybe a slightly drier entry. It was in a financial or insurance kind of area, something like that. And I'll be honest, it wasn't the most exciting, interesting, new tech way of doing things. But what they had was the business performance and a passion. And that's what came off the page. And then in the interviews, that's what came through really strongly. Hesketh, tell us a bit about what it is that you're looking for in those interviews.
I think that it's all joined up again, that the team knows what they've been doing and why they've been doing it. It's an opportunity to hear about that learning again, the things that they've tried, and you get the confidence then that this group of people know what they're doing for the business. And sometimes it can be simple as well. It doesn't have to be big and complex in terms of programs. It doesn't have to be big and complex in terms of presentations. It's something that just it just fascinates you, and you want to find out more, and you're giving them the opportunity. And as you said, Joe, sometimes their application submissions that aren't so exciting, but you think, I'm sure there's something under here. So where you can, you get them along to the shortlist, and sure enough, if you're lucky, in that time between submission and the shortlisting interview, they've really gone to town thinking about it and presenting a really good story. And again, doesn't necessarily have to be long. To the point, full of good stuff. It's surprising when I look back at some of them, the presentations and the events. Some seem to go longer, some seem to go shorter. And it's surprising how much content you can get in a short time when it's bang on.
And I think that point about the right content at the right time is so important. I've had awards where I've been judging, and especially where they're around, usually technology, it's a bit more of my wheelhouse. And I remember one of them actually didn't bring a demo of what they were doing. So I had absolutely no visual concept at all, other than they did an e-learning program. But we all know e-learning can be the most horrific thing on earth, or it can be the most amazing way to deliver your learning needs. And because there was no demo, there was nothing on an iPad, it wasn't even print out of screen grabs, you know, that would have been absolutely fine. And there was none of that. And as Hesketh says here, small and cheap can be good too. That's a good point, Hesketh, because actually I think the award that we gave on the year that I worked on it was to a medium or mid-sized kind of cost. And actually there was something that was really big, really expensive, really flashy, but actually left us quite cold, because like, well, actually we're not sure you got the results. And to be honest, I think you just had something really flashy over the top of something that wasn't great as a design. Chris, I am going to come to you in a minute, I promise, about this interview point, but I just want to pick up on what Hesketh was saying here about small and cheap can be good. Tell us a bit more, Hesketh.
Small and cheap and the big and expensive weren't particular award submissions in the past, but clients I worked with, and there was one in pharmaceuticals who... they have a lot of money very often, and they spent an absolute fortune on a leadership development program, which was very enjoyable, residential, great speakers, but for no business purpose whatsoever, other than rah-rah. So that sort of thing, and I think maybe Joe, you were alluding to something a bit like that, there was no purpose to that. The purpose may have been, and it was never articulated, that they wanted senior people to start feeling good about themselves and network and do blah-de-da, in which case maybe, if it was an award submission, you could look at something like that. But it completely, from a business perspective, as far as I could see, there was no purpose other than spending a lot of money and people feeling rather nice at the end of it. Whereas, and this wasn't an award submission, but in terms of if it had been in one, it would have been really lovely. At one of the Charity Learning Consortium, CLC events, an organisation shared something they did, and I can't remember who they were because I'd love to remember. They were launching their learning management system, and they couldn't afford rah-rah, they couldn't afford anything big and expensive, as you can't in a charity, and sometimes having no money is really good for focusing your mind. They sent a postcard round with a tea bag stapled to it saying, sit down with a cuppa and have a look at what we've got for you. And I thought, fantastic, I'm going to remember that, as I have done today, and maybe someone's heard that from me before in the past. But what a fantastic way of, for 2p a person, doing something that's going to make as much impact as £1,000 on a leadership development program in a funny way. So that's what I mean about, you know, big and small.
Yeah. Thank you, Hesketh. I think that's a great example. I love that. It's made me smile. Chris, what's the kind of advice that you give to people once they've got shortlisted?
Well, going back to the thing we discussed earlier, the emotional and rational side, there's always an emphasis. With the written entry, it's a scoring system, and you have to tick the box and answer the question. So it's a lot more rational, although you do definitely need to tell a story. You need to engage the reader. The face-to-face element is a much more emotional decision. Even if you go into it as a judge, and I do a lot of judging as well, and you go into it and you intend to make an entirely rational decision, if someone presents with passion and conviction a well-rehearsed presentation with the right speakers, they have a director in the room, they have a stakeholder in the room, and they all play their part. It's all well choreographed, and it makes you smile or laugh or cry, but it has that effect on you. You can't help but want them to win than someone who turns up slightly smug, blags it because they're too busy to do a proper presentation. And so preparation, getting the right speakers, and passion and conviction. You're sitting in front of judges, and you know, Margaret, as rightly says, the judges are humans. They welcome you into the room with a smile. just because they're called judges doesn't mean you have to greet them malud. It's not a dry, starchy affair. If you can make the judges laugh or cry or chat with you or round of applause, then you're more likely to win. Engage with these. They're human beings. They want to be inspired, and you're not going to win unless you inspire them. So just pull out all the stops and just blow them away. But don't go in there thinking it's a formal pitch, like a sales pitch. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think it's that, for those of the Britain's Got Talent kind of viewers, it's that golden buzzer moment. That's what we want, is to be able, we want at the end of an interview to go, oh, I loved that, loved them, that was brilliant, they've gone right to the #1 of my list. And I know how it feels to have picked a winner in, say, September, and have to wait until December. And you're like, I know who's won, and it's brilliant.
I love the teabag story, and that's a little clincher. It's a clincher. It's that
you have to
stroke of genius where the judges go, love that.
Margaret, you've been...
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Yep. That's okay. No, great comment. Thank you, Chris. Margaret.
Yeah, I think some really good examples of things that help us when we're judging in that face-to-face situation. I would also say that pretty much every time I've done this, we've shortlisted our 6, and there may be 1 or 2 that are towards the bottom of that 6 in our mind, and then we get to the interviews and someone's gone from being in number 6 position straight to number 1 or 2 because of how well they present. Certainly from what Chris is saying, that structure, that using each person, sometimes you see 3 people come into the room, but actually only 1 ever speaks and you don't really know why the others are there. So very clear roles for each person, obviously well prepared, structured and thought about. We want to know people have taken it seriously and they've thought a lot about it. That's really key. And yeah, just that bit of creativity. Just think about us seeing a number of people in one day, typically 6 entries in a day. So what's going to make you stand out? What's going to help us remember? With my judging team, I will normally say, right, we've all got an emotional reaction right now at the end of the day, and we think we know who's winning, but why don't we take a few days and we'll just take a step back and we'll review our notes and we'll come back together and we'll have a chat about who we really think ought to be in that gold, silver and bronze position. Once we've had a few days to think about it. Now, for that to stick, for your presentation to stick, it needs to be memorable in some way. And for me, that memorable may be some great visuals, it may be an amazing story, and it's certainly going to be about the emotion. Certainly, one I judged last year, the gold winner last year, the person who coordinated the presentation and coordinated the program sits in my mind even now, has a really strong connection, and I could not wait for the night, as you said, Jo, to watch her face when she heard she'd won. I was so excited for her. She was head and shoulders, her and her team were head and shoulders above everyone else. And yet from the written submission, in there somewhere, but not necessarily at the top. So it's a really good chance to bring everything together for us and help us to decide that you're a winner.
Brilliant. And I think, all this conversation around preparation and delivery of a great presentation, what I don't want people to hear is that you have to be polished, performed actors. It's not about that. It's about being human and authentic. And certainly an award that I've awarded as gold in the past didn't have the most polished interview and discussion. It was actually a little bit challenging. People had English as a second language and things like that. It was actually a little bit more of one of the challenging conversations that we had, and it didn't stick in my mind for being funny, or it wasn't a massive emotional pull and stuff like that. But they had a problem, they solved it, they told all of the little details about how that's improved what's going on in the business. and it just became the absolute clear front runner. So I just don't want people to kind of feel that they have to be super polished actors to be this, but it is about telling that great story and being comfortable in delivering that and to time. That's the kind of thing that I think we're meaning. Okay, let's have some last thoughts from Hesketh and then from Chris before we wrap up today. And of course, in the chat room, if you've got any kind of last questions, then please do let us know. Hesketh, last thoughts on award entry and interview and how to maximise success in the TJ Awards.
Think about the next stage. And in terms of evaluation, hard numbers are really good. But I spent a long time, because we're in learning and development, we love the soft stuff too. We want people to be really enthused. But how do you catch the numbers? And I used to spend a lot of time talking about the hard presentation of soft data until I heard Brené Brown on TED talking about, I've got to remember now, yes, stories are just data with a soul, which I think is fantastic. So if you've got soft things as well, if you know that 25% of your managers have said this has done so-and-so for them, then that's as great as having some financial bottom line things, provided you present it in a way that kind of makes sense. So don't forget about the soft stuff that goes with the hard stuff.
Yeah, I'd imagine that, I think Hess covered up a lot of it.
Chris,
but imagine this, imagine on the night you go up to Hess or Margaret or Joe, and you have one. They have seen you walk up on stage with a big grin on their face because they've been holding it in for 2 months. And you were to walk up to them and say, I'm so pleased I won, but why did you choose me? What would they say? Why did they choose you? If you can't answer that question, then you're not ready to enter the award. Think through what your clinchers are. What is it that they will say back at you as a reason they picked your program? And make sure that that shouts off the page in your written entry while also ticking all the boxes.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Chris. That was a really nice summary to what we have gone through here. What an amazing conversation with everybody. I'm going to say thank you very much to Margaret, Chris and to Hesketh as well. We're going to come off webcam whilst I go and wrap up. So let's just wave a little goodbye and say thank you very much to them. Absolutely brilliant. And in the meantime, what have we got in the chat window? Rachel had said thank you for all of your advice. Really great points. And I can't wait to get started with some planning and some key questions. Absolutely lovely. Thank you very much for that. And Tanya says here, excited to get started. Thank you so much for giving us the time. It's absolutely our pleasure. Debbie has joined us, Debbie Carter, and she says, sorry I'm late, but if anyone has questions not answered, do contact me. And she shared her email address. Now, I told you she'd say that, didn't I? There you go. So it leaves me to say thank you so much to Hesketh Emden and also to Chris Robinson as well for kind of his inspiration, and for Margaret Burnside as well for the information that she has provided to us and their experience. Absolutely great conversation. You can go and follow on #TJWow or also #TJA19 for the TJ Awards this year. Everything will be on our website. You can go and find that. The recording from today will be up there probably tomorrow, something like that, once we have a chance to get it processed. What's our next webinar coming up? Well, it's not an awards one, but what you can do is you can go and find out a little bit more about, well, what is it that we can learn from the sales arena to help us about understanding our customer. And maybe it won't help for your award for TJA 19, but maybe if you come on this webinar, it'll help you think about your awards for 2020. Also, in addition to Debbie, has shared her email address there. We do have a LinkedIn group if you want to come along and ask any questions at all. So once again, thank you, Chris, Hesketh and Margaret, and also thank you